This episode of the SwitchCast is produced by Darkus, our honored patron and Switch Knight.
Hey everyone, I'm Casey.
And I'm JV.
But not for long.
I'll still be JV.
Yeah, you'll still be JV, but once you leave your homeland of Austin, all your powers are stripped.
That's true. I am going to Seattle later this week, so we are recording this episode, or at least this half of the episode, just a little bit early.
And this is the SwitchCast, in case you didn't know, the podcast for the Nintendo Switch fanboy and rational, level-headed fans.
Yes.
Alike.
Yes, for both of you. For both categories of people.
But yeah, no, because of that, we decided there's just a couple of things we had to make sure JV did not miss the discussion for. First and foremost, we have to talk Pokken today. Pokken! We have to talk Pokken today.
You did it again, Casey! Pokken Tournament.
But you see, the spelling doesn't make sense. I
know
it's
it absolutely does not.
You know, it's a portmanteau of Pokemon and Tekken, but when you put P-O-K next to each other, that's poke.
Yeah, and what makes it worse is that there's an accent on the E, so it looks like they want you to pronounce it as Pokken Tournament.
Yeah, it's anyway. We're going to have a big, nice conversation about that because, I think we've been playing that very thoroughly since its release.
Oh, absolutely. It's been, as soon as it came out this past weekend, that's all I've been playing. Yeah. All I've been playing, Casey.
I have as well. And we actually have some interesting variations on angles how to talk about this, because I'm someone who never played it on a Wii U, and nor have I played any real fighting games thoroughly ever. You know, I tried once or twice, but things distracted me, so I never really got into them. So this is probably the first fighting game. It's definitely the first fighting game I full out bought and just said, I'm going to play this thoroughly. So, but you're coming from the other end of the spectrum. You're someone who loves this genre. You kind of identify with it. And you've played the Wii U one pretty much a lot, haven't you?
Right, that's right. I've played the original Pokken Tournament on the Wii U quite a bit. And I follow the fighting game scene quite a bit more than you do, Casey.
Yes, indeed.
I'm probably a person that, between us two, that has played fighting games on a more competitive level more often.
Well, I'll at least say video game fighting games, because I'm the one who I took very seriously all the fighting themed card games and those ones that stripped out the action, and I got immersed actually in the fighting game culture, at least thanks to the forums I got involved in, and I got very into that. There's that great YouTube channel, Core A Gaming. There's
a lot of really good YouTube channels that cover the core concepts of fighting games, and I really like when those when they delve into that stuff.
But I bring up YouTube channels today mostly because I believe you're going to be breaking in the SwitchCast into the YouTube scene.
That's right. I kind of teased this a bit in the Discord chat, but we finally have a capture card for our Switches, and it's all thanks to you, patron backers, that we were able to get this going. So I've already straightened out the process for video editing and video capture, and we're really going to be pumping out some video content for you guys soon. It's exciting, Casey.
You just sent me a couple of just clips that you took from Pokken Tournament, and just to show off, and I'm already hyped to see just you capturing your gameplay and putting a few graphics on there, and definitely the idea of just doing a few video reviews here and there, or streaming a couple of tournaments, or just putting up some recordings of some of our big games that we have. It's just going to be a really nice aspect for the site and the community to take advantage of.
Exactly. It's definitely nothing that's going to replace the podcast itself. But thanks to all of you patrons for showing us our support and letting us grow in this direction. I'm so excited.
And a lot of support, beginning a lot of support from all angles this week, and I definitely wanted to mention specifically Darkus, who we mentioned as our producer of this week, but he also just out of the blue decided, he heard me shopping around for Switch controllers because I wanted to have a wired controller for fighting games, and I wanted to take out, that's how serious I'm taking Pokken Tournament. I want to get the best controller for the medium. And he just heard me saying that. I was like, oh wait, but you have a pro controller though, right? I was like, no, not yet. I was considering it, but it's not necessarily the top of my list. He's like, oh no, we have to change that. You need a pro controller. And he just sent me one.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I love how, charitable you guys are within the community. I want to myself give a shout out to T-Bond, who just on a whim felt inspired to send us really cool prizes for a big tournament coming up for Splatoon. So yeah, we have awesome listeners, Casey. They're really great members of our community.
Yes. So I do plan, because my controllers are coming tomorrow, actually. I will have a comparison next week between the Pro Controller and the Hori Nintendo Switch controller, the wired one.
I definitely want to hear more about that because, the fighting game community really pushes for wired controllers all the time. It has to be wired or else there might be some input lag that affects your performance. But someone like you, from an outside perspective, it'd be nice to see if it really feels like it's affecting your overall gameplay.
I'll say one big concern, though, I had when I was picking is I was looking at the Pokken Tournament controller as an option, but the lack of the analog sticks turned me off only because, and I know that you don't need those for Pokken, but with Mario Odyssey coming out next month, and I want to play that 2-player with Amelie, I wanted just to have
another controller.
Yeah, full controller with analog sticks so that we could both just have full controllers in our hand and not have to share the joy. When we're just sitting at home, we want to play it like with the full controllers.
Right, that's definitely understandable.
Yeah. But speaking of tournaments, though, I'm going to start making this a habit of mine. Since every other weekend I'm pretty much free, I'm going to try to do a double header of tourneys every weekend that I happen to be around. And the way I'm basically going to do it is Saturdays are going to be the new hotness. Sundays are going to be throwback revivals of things that maybe haven't been getting as much love.
Yeah, and I think this is actually a really great idea. It gives us something to look forward to each week. Something a bit more structured to look forward to each week, even if it doesn't necessarily have a prize at the end of the experience.
Correct. These are not necessarily, these aren't our prize tournaments, but they're just good ways to get organized, make sure everyone's around to play at the same time, and just have a good little structured game time. And for example, this weekend, 7 o'clock at Eastern, Saturday, I'm going to be doing the Pokken Tournament. We'll probably do a round robin or a double elimination. I think they have round robin built into the room system in that. Yeah, so we'll probably try that out. And then I will try Sunday. We're going to do a Mario Kart 8 battle mode tourney. And I have no idea yet how I'm even going to score that, but I'll figure something out. But that'll also be 7 p.m. Eastern, and that'll be Sunday. So that's this weekend of tournaments.
Yeah, it's definitely, I'm excited to do that again because I want to have some sort of structured schedule for everyone to meet up and participate in one game. And that doesn't have the stakes of a full-fledged tournament.
Yeah, right, exactly. And we'll talk about that more because a lot of the online organization is something that we're going to talk about with Pokken Tournament. So we're almost going to get to that in just a minute. But the last thing I wanted to mention is I recently had an appearance on another podcast who invited me over. It was the Nintendo Power Zone podcast. And it happens to be run by an old fan of our work in the past, way back from the Pala Tribune. And apparently he's just been doing this Nintendo podcast, so I'll make a post online when the actual episode's up. But if you want to hear me blather even more about Nintendo Switch and podcasting in general, you know, it's just something to listen to more of my voice, I guess.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, let's get into the game time, and let's just finally, you know, face off with the big title of the week.
Pokken Tournament. Let's go.
All right, JV, Pokken Tournament. I wanted to ask you, actually, just to kick this off, going into this, being a fan of the Wii U game, what is your feelings of Pokken Tournament before this came out? How much did you like it already on the Wii U?
So I was an absolutely massive fan of Pokken Tournament when it first came out on the Wii U. I got it as soon as it was released there, and it's been a big factor in why I've kept my Wii U for so long. Yeah, that and Brawl were like the big games that were bringing me back to the Wii U, despite already having moved on to the Switch. Now that Pokken Tournament DX is on the Switch itself, I feel like it has new life on this platform, and has the potential to be even more popular than it's ever been.
Yeah, I'll say this much. It is in that same category of Mario Kart 8, where people who had it on Wii U, I hear a lot of them saying that they can't justify the purchase of this game. And I kind of understand what they're saying, but I really think that, and this reveals a little bit of my opinion of it, that you might be just betraying yourself from a good experience by putting yourself in that mentality, because yes, it's the same game, but the game of this nature is really about the community and the people you're playing with. And it's not the same. I mean, I can see already that there's going to be a lot more momentum in terms of actual people to play and a lively community than the Wii U version got. So I'm going to just tell people, if you bought it on Wii U, don't just write this game off as, I don't need to buy it again because I already own it, because, you know, that's probably shooting yourself in the foot.
Right, and I definitely want to start this off by saying I think Pokken Tournament DX is going to be massive on the Switch compared to on the Wii U. A lot of the big criticisms of Pokken Tournament DX was that it didn't really have as much new content to it compared to on the Wii U. Like, we only really got 5 new characters and a couple new modes, so people didn't feel like it justified the new purchase. However, I have to implore, the technology behind the Switch is really a benefiting factor for this game. The big limiting factor for Pokken Tournament's popularity on the Wii U was that it was on the Wii U. It was very difficult to hook up local multiplayer games and big tournaments because of how cumbersome the Wii U local setup needed to be. Now that it's on the Switch, it's so seamless.
Yeah, honestly, I think that is the number one improvement that has to be stressed as much as possible. Just the fact that it's on the Switch alone is a huge improvement. Even if it, regardless of any graphical or features improvement, just that, yeah, that it's something you could bring around, and that, like, tomorrow I have my fighting tournament card game group, but I'm bringing this, and there's a lot of people who are probably going to throw down in a few Pokken matches just because we're just going to have it on us, and it's just easy to, you know, whip out anywhere for a good tournament anywhere. Exactly.
And not even just that, Casey. Pokken Tournament originally, had a real huge spike in popularity in the beginning, but you have to understand how cumbersome it was to get optimal local multiplayer going there. You had to hook up a Wii U onto one TV, then hook up that Wii U through a LAN cable to another Wii U, and then onto another screen just to get 2 players to compete against each other. That was really hampering local tournaments, and it was very difficult to get setups for that. So that hurdle, it really slowed down the hype of this game, and I feel like on the Switch it bypasses that quite a bit.
All right, so let's talk about the game itself, its generalities. We've probably mentioned a few of these before, but let's just dig into the gameplay, the core of how Pokken Tournament is a fighter. It's definitely not the straightforward. It's really a hybrid of a lot of different fighting game features that I'm all familiar with from playing, but none of them have I ever seen together like this.
This kind of has a trio that each fighting game has. Do you want to describe how the basic mechanics work, Casey?
The way the core gameplay works is it starts out in this three-dimensional arena. What you're playing is called field mode at first, and this is kind of like Power Stone in that you're running 360 degrees on the field. You are mostly shooting projectiles. It's a very positional kind of gameplay, and eventually someone will score a big hit, or you just do enough damage where it'll switch into the 2D kind of a more traditional style of gameplay called dual mode. And in dual mode, that is when the camera kind of locks to the side, and now it's more of the bigger damage attacks can happen here, and your moveset kind of changes up to match this a little bit. I mean, some moves carry over, but you change mechanically in some ways. But this is where some of the bigger damaging attacks can happen and the combos can go off. And eventually, though, you can get either thrown out of this or, similar to before, different attacks will switch you back into field mode. So it kind of flows back and forth from this little positional game where you try to grab items and power-ups and just kind of pepper your enemy with little damage. You move in, you try to do some big damage in dual mode, and then either, get out of it. Some characters specialize in field mode and they try to just keep that mode going, and then there's some characters who like to stay in dual mode and will, try never to let you go from there.
Right, and along with the field mode, dual mode difference and flow of the game, there's a very simple concept called the attack triangle, where there's 3 different styles of attacks that actually form that counter each other. So there's a normal attack, which is just your normal hits. There's a grab attack where you grab the opponent and then do one big hit. And then there's a counter attack where you essentially pause for a moment, absorbing different hits, and then doing a big counter strike. And these these all counter each other. So essentially, normal attacks beat grab attacks beat counter attacks, and counter attacks beat normal attacks. And what's beautiful about this is that it's very clear what type of attack is being used by the opponent. Grab attacks highlight your character in a green aura. Counterattacks highlight them in blue. And there's a lot of mind games going on here. And that's part of the beauty of the game.
Now, it's also important to note that there's some attacks that might not... Like there's always the grab button, right? You could just hit 2 buttons, and that's your basic grab, and there's another 2 buttons that you hit, and that's the basic counter attack. But there's also some attacks that some guys have, like their specials, that count as a counter or a grab. And that glow that JV just mentioned, that really helps people to realize, oh, why can I never hit him when he does this attack? Oh, it counts as a counterattack. I would never have known that. In a lot of games, this is kind of a problem for someone like me. I don't know that this attack counts as a grab or this attack counts as, piercing or whatever it's called, But the color coding of the characters when they do them just gives you a very easy to identify signifier that this is the kind of, he just used rock, he just used paper. And even though grabs aren't as common, like the vast majority of your things are normal attacks, those other 2 things are just as important because of when you choose to use them and how to, counter things that are coming at you.
Exactly. That's really the beauty of this game. There's mind games involved between this triangle and the phases that Casey mentioned earlier. Do you want to fight in dual phase and get up close and personal? Or are you a type of player / character that prefers to fall back and keep at a distance at the opponent, so you try to take advantage of that by staying in the field phase a bit longer? You also have to consider whether you're expecting them to do a counterattack. So are they about to counter? Should I do my own grab to beat out their counterattack? Are they going to rush me down with normal attack so I should trigger a counterattack to push that back? It might even sound a bit more complex than it is, but a lot of these are mind games come into play really quickly, and it's pretty it's a fluid thought process, Casey.
I'll say this much. Now, it's something that anyone who's played fighting games a lot will be familiar with this kind of triangle, which isn't necessarily unique. I mean, most fighting games have a rock, paper, a triangle of similar. But the way I felt that this is a bit different is that I do feel from the moment I've turned on this game that Pokken Tournament wants me to learn how to play it and is doing a very thorough job of getting me up to speed, which is something that I have a problem with most fighting games, is that I have to understand how to counter anything. I have to go to forums and I have to talk to people and I have to just really dive into stuff to understand how to handle most of the problems I come across. I feel like the tutorial alone is extremely thorough in this game, from the basics to learning every move that your character does and what usefulness is in there. It's really been helpful to bring me up to speed.
I love that this game really takes the fundamentals of what makes fighting games fun and makes it accessible to people, even more so than a game like ARMS, just because it is utilizing the structure of 2D fighting games and 3D fighting games combined.
This definitely is still a harder game to get into, and it's a way more complicated game at its highest levels than ARMS. I mean, in addition to the mechanics that we just mentioned, there's also the aspect of support Pokemon and picking little guys that you can call into battle, and the sheer skills, and whether you want to boost your super mode and your finishing attacks, and there's a few more mechanics in there, and they all tie together in interesting ways. But it is a lot. It is a lot that some people might need to take their time absorbing it. So unlike ARMS was a lot quicker to just pick up, and the only thing you had to master was how to aim your punches and stuff like that. But at the same time, I feel like this one has a higher reward for your investment of time, where, ARMS, you can hit the skill cap, I think, relatively easily, and it's still, it's fun, but I feel like you can pretty much master all the mechanics within a reasonable amount of time. Whereas I feel like Pokken, I can get to a competent level where I'm having fun with everyone in the community, and in my online play, I feel like I've played some pretty good players, and I wasn't just getting crushed, but there's still a lot of complexity for me to master if I want to, start really poning noobs.
Indeed, yeah. And honestly, the beauty of this game, I feel, is in the phase system, in the fact that field phase and duel phase are essentially different modes of fighting within the same battle itself. Mm-hmm. And that's a problem that a lot of 3D fighting games have had in the past. 3D fighting games don't really have that whole combo element. They aren't able to get quite as deep as what Pokken has.
I do love that, the two phases mode. And I think that is something that spices up the gameplay. It keeps any fight from being monotonous. And even if, even if you're not doing well, let's say someone's spamming a certain attack and you just get eventually, if they spam you with attack, you'll get knocked into the other mode. And it's another chance for you to change the script and try something new. And maybe I know next time I get into duel mode, I just have to be up close, because once they start spamming that distance attack, I don't know what to do, but I have a new option once I'm in the other mode.
The duel and field phases feel like different tempos of the game. While in the field phase, it really feels like a positional, a tactical zoning situation, while in the duel phase, you're way more aggressive, and your primary objective really is to deal as much damage as possible. you after doing a certain number of combos or dealing a certain amount of damage, you get swapped out of the other phase in the middle of that combo. And mechanically, that's just a perfect way to prevent infinite combos from happening.
Now, what I'll say, though, I feel as honestly the true beauty of this game, or what actually got me to pick it up, because as great as that system is, that's not why I bought this. The reason I bought this is because it's a game designed, I think, to attract more people to a fighting game than would probably have picked it up otherwise. Because it's Pokemon. It's not just humans. It's not these, I'm a tough robot man. I'm a crazy demon dude. Like all these kind of tropes that we're used to. Fine. Whatever game you like, it has its own tropes, but nothing else. There is no other fighting game that has Owlman versus, Sharknado monster. It's like and four-armed wrestling guy, which Goro doesn't count. But it's another way to attract people with these Pokemon characters, and then they kind of followed it up with what I said with that tutorial and all the ways that they have the complexity there, but that's there for once you've taken this bait and you start picking up the easy combos. Like all this, there are a lot of very simple combos that are pretty useful, and all the different and the battle system that uses Smash Brothers style moves, where every special attack is just direction and this button and other direction and that button. No Hadouken motions, nothing like that for you to memorize. Even though I still forget. Like I was playing a battle, like for 2 battles straight, I was like, how do I shoot my laser with Chandelure? Oh, right, I've been hitting A this whole time. I'm supposed to be hitting X. Stupid me, But
right,
it's very easy to just grasp every move your character can do within a very short period of time. And then learning how to put them together into combos and do the more advanced stuff will come. But I think they've done a good job of making a decently approachable fighting game with a very attractive aesthetic and theme.
And that's a big deal to me. When they released when they announced that they were going to make a Pokemon fighting game, obviously, Casey, you and I are huge Pokemon fans for many years now. And at the time, I was very heavily into the fighting game scene as well. So while I was excited, I was also nervous. I really wanted this game to be good, and if it wasn't, it'd be something that would disappoint me to the core. So I'm just doubly glad that they've churned out a strong fighting game for this franchise.
Yeah, I expected it to go the other way. Honestly, when I first heard of this, I thought it was going to be a Smash Brothers type of game, totally, where it was just going to be,
Smash
something
Brothers
that's
but Pokemon?
Not entirely, but basically, like just something with very simple, I don't want to say dumbed down controls, but just something with very straightforward, not super deep gameplay that was just supposed to be a fun rock'em sock'em Pokemon kind of game. But the fact that they turned it into this pretty deep, real fighting game surprised me, and I'm kind of excited at the possibility that I may become I don't want to say good as in like I'm better than Mosby, a good enough fighting game player, and I think this can do it.
Yeah, I definitely agree. This has the capacity for that, and I remember when this game actually was first released, people were kind of panning it, thinking it was kind of simple, but as players got more and more competitive, more layers were being revealed about the depth of this game, and now it's just completely embraced by the hardcore fighting game community.
I do think it's also worth noting that, and we talked about this, that the balance of the game seems very strong.
Right. So yeah, there's a lot of matchup charts out there, and a lot of the matchups within the game and the tiering in this game is quite balanced. It's quite narrow.
Yeah, like even like every game has like the tier lists, and here's the lowest level guys, and they have the most bad matchups, and here's the god tier, the ones that are like the most solid matchups. But usually the gap between the weakest quote unquote character and the strongest is pretty significant in a lot of fighting games. From just my cursory research, it looks like there's just not that big a gap between even the lowest tier and the god tier characters in this game, meaning that if you like Machamp, there is no reason not to just embrace him. Sure, he has like 2 more slightly disadvantageous matchups than, let's say, Dark Mewtwo. It doesn't mean he's not worth putting the time into. Oh yeah, Shadow Mewtwo. It doesn't mean he's not worth putting the time in. If you click with him, that's the more important thing. That'll bring him up higher than playing with a god tier character that you just don't feel.
Right, and that is actually part of the beauty of the field and dual face system within this game. Someone like Machamp or Suicune, who is considered some of the lowest tier characters, they can thrive because they just reign supreme within the field phase. Mm-hmm. And you're able to actively work on the tempo of the game, and that lets you strategize on and focus on the strengths of your character, despite not necessarily being as well-roundedly good as others.
Yeah, that's actually why I've picked Braixen as my main right now. She's a pretty all-round kind of character, but I just appreciated that she had tools that made her like I had a matchup today. I was playing someone online who was a really good Machamp player, and the first 2 matches with him, he just like perfected me because like I could, once he got in, he just does so much damage and he wouldn't like give up. He wouldn't let me out of close range, and I had to learn how to take advantage of my field mode tools that I have and just not let him in and just do my chip damage and just play it patient and play keep away as long as I can. And then when he got in, all right, I take a little damage, but I take a lot of damage, but I have to make sure I get out of that mode as fast as possible and then just do my damage where I can. And I like that positioning gameplay being a huge part of it, not just being who knows the longer combo. Exactly.
And I definitely want to have a caveat towards that, because you said keep away, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's annoying or an aggravating game where you can't really play. Let's say I was on the other side of that as the Machamp player in Casey's game. He's trying to keep away from me, but I'm on the other side trying to figure out and position, how do I approach? How do I get in and use the tools I have to close the gap and get Casey's character to the dual phase, which is where I reign supreme. And that's just a lot of really interesting game heuristics for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and actually, it's a fair thing to note that even if I'm doing decent damage at range, if eventually I'm going to hit him with a big attack that just switches it to dual mode no matter what. I can't I can never just keep it in field mode permanently. Sooner or later it will switch, and now I have to deal with this mode and just, try to, survive it.
Yeah, exactly. Or, yes, that's really the beauty of this game.
All right, let's talk about some of the other aspects of it that might be, less beautiful so far. The single player mode right now, first thing is first, it's worth noting that, honestly, I've never seen, other than Smash Brothers, I can't think of another fighting game that has a really AAA experience for one player. It's just not something that fighting games are well tuned, or it's just the genre doesn't lend itself to, I feel.
Yeah, that's generally something that fighting games don't have. Now, I do have to make note of NetherRealm Studios. They're the ones that made the new Mortal Kombat 9 and X games, Injustice 2. They've really set the bar on awesome fighting game stories and single-player content.
Okay.
But that's not... Yeah, they've really integrated fighting game characters into a streamlined story, and that really should set the bar for every other fighting game out there. That being said, it's not industry-wide. This is just one studio doing awesome fighting game stories. So right now, this type of stuff isn't as prevalent so far.
The main way the single-player mode works is there are the different leagues, and in each league you have to kind of rise through the ranks before you can go to a tournament. And when you beat the tournament, you beat basically the equivalent of a gym leader in order to ascend to the next league. The rising in the ranks is probably right now the most grindy part of it. And you fight 5 matches in a row, and then based on your record through those, your rank will either go up or down, and you just have to keep doing this until you reach rank 8 or higher. And I mean, there's some pros to it. It's a lot more fights than most one-player modes have, in that, like, you play Street Fighter or something like that, you just play every character in the roster once, you're done, and then you fight some boss. At least this gives it a little more game time, but I feel like without the unlockables, since this game has all the original game's content fully unlocked, plus extra content, there's really not that same, I'm working to unlock this character, so it doesn't feel as necessary, but it can be a little monotonous, that's all.
And I do want to mention the voice acting in the game isn't great.
Yeah.
The primary, I guess, narrator or the main character of this game is Nia, and her voice acting can get so grating.
It's such a shame because I think she's a cool character. Like, I like.
Oh, she totally is. I love her dialogue. Sometimes she can get much, though.
Yeah, I do like her design. I think she's a cute character. I like her design, but yeah, her voice acting is just so like. And then you can go to the tournament room, and that's where you'll find tournament battles. It's just like, you sound so like you're reading a script.
Yeah, it's not the best voice acting. Luckily, you can turn her off.
And you could change it to Japanese.
Yeah, and I think her Japanese voice actress is better.
The story overall, I think, could use a pump up. Like right now, it's just, after the first league, I ran into a Shadow Mewtwo for no real reason. He just shows up, fights me, and some mysterious girl who's working with him disappears. And I'm just like, okay, that made no sense. And I'm not really like pulled into any kind of plot. It's like, I feel like they could have done a little bit of what this game needed was a rival. It needs a Gary Oak type character because it's so perfect for that to happen, where like, here's the person that you want to beat more than any other in the tournaments. And I want to have someone like that shows up and, maybe he's a little bit of a jerk, and I want to just really get to beat him in the tournament. Something like that, rather than this mysterious, nobody who I just have no care for.
Single player story mode of this game really, it really doesn't have that much to it. It's not really what you come into this game for anyway.
Right. Character customization though was surprisingly robust. There's tons of cool options for shirts, hats, glasses, all that kind of stuff. You can really make a pretty much a unique avatar, though I do wish there were more like face options than 14-year-old boy or 14-year-old girl. I don't like looking like just, some super young person. I want to look like an old man like I am. I don't want to just be one of these youngsters all the time.
Yeah, you are definitely one to do that, Casey. I'm on the opposite spectrum. I'm fine with looking like a younger person. It's no big deal to me. But
they all look like the same younger person with just cut hair.
The difference really just lies in the facial expression and
yeah.
It's not necessarily the biggest customization. I do like that there are clothing options and hair options, but I don't think they really focused on that aspect of the game too much.
I think they put a decent amount into it, though. I thought it was a pretty well done. I just wish there was a few more of the Pokemon tropes, like, you could be hiker or master trainer, like all those kind of characters that are, indicative of the series. I feel like they had a lot of possible palettes for you to pick from.
Right. That would definitely be an awesome idea.
Yeah. And plus also that's the main thing you're unlocking as you're playing through the game. So again, something else to spend your money on would have been, nice, since I was able to afford all the clothes I really want early on. So again, I'm kind of without stuff I want to work to unlocking.
Right. Now there is Pokemon customization within the single player mode. You can pick a character, and as you play through the single player mode, you get points that you can use to level up certain aspects of the Pokemon itself.
Yeah, something like attack and defense, self-explanatory. Strategy, which is what builds up your support Pokemon's abilities and how fast you charge that up. And then there's synergy, which increases the effectiveness and how fast you charge up your Super Saiyan form that you do and your finishing moves.
Yes, exactly. Right now I'm focusing on my Scissor, and I just love how Mega Scissor works and how he looks. So I'm focusing him on the synergy element, so his synergy bar would charge up faster.
Now, I do have a little bit of mixed opinion on this in that, it is another one of those features that, like we complained about in ARMS, like the plus ARMS, where they had a bonus. It was, even at max power, it's not like these give you overwhelming force. If you put 100 points into one of the stats, it's about a 10% boost. We looked up, but at the same time, it is something that, like, when I play other people I know, I just want to turn this off, at least until me and all my opponents have maxed out the stats, and that we could then you can play around, because then you could say, all right, I want to try this character, but I want to try him with max defense and synergy, and I think that's my strategy with this guy, or whatever other kind of customization you want to do with it.
Right. Pokemon customization, I think, is mostly a single-player feature. In multiplayer competitive battles, this feature is actually turned off by default. So.
No, it isn't.
Like, online, at least.
Yeah, online, this is on. Unless you specifically choose an option. There is an option to turn it off. But in all the matches I've been playing, it is on by default.
Okay, that might be different in the group mode because...
Well, you might have set it in the group. Or yeah, maybe in the group it's automatically set to that. But in the groups that I joined that weren't the SwitchCast group, I'm pretty sure it was on. So
well, the group functionality is new to DX. Like, you would just be, if you're playing ranked modes, it would just pair you. I don't know if that was it was like that back then. At the very least, I know that in competitive tournament formats for this game, they turned this feature off. So if you ever go to a tournament, this feature is likely not to be in play.
The other little things they added, there's the new challenge mode. Have you touched this at all?
Yes, I have. It essentially lets you play a set character with a set of rules that you have to follow. It never really felt particularly challenging to me, but it is a good reason for me to explore characters I haven't played before.
Yeah, I just thought it was a missed opportunity to do some clever challenges. Like, hey, today we're going to have a challenge where attacks beat counterattacks and counterattacks beat throws, and, like something changed up, just something fun rather than just you have to use this character support Pokemon thing. But
I don't know. Is there a chance that they would do that in the future? It doesn't seem like it's something that would be difficult for them to implement in a future challenge. Maybe
they're just keeping it easy for now. But all right, so the big meat and potatoes, we got the online modes and the local multiplayer modes. We just kind of talked about a little bit of online. I've had a pretty good time finding matchups in just the the friendly matches where they just randomly link you up with somebody. But the groups are the new thing that's just a little different rather than just getting a random matchup.
I'm so glad they implemented this into the game, KC. The groups mode in Pokken Tournament is essentially the same as the groups mode in Mario Kart. Which is exactly what I was looking for this game. You are able to set a persistent group channel that everyone who has the code can join, so we can have a persistent central place to meet up and fight.
Yeah, so like right now we have one for the SwitchCast, and anyone who joins that group can just, once you put in the code, you can just always easily quick join it, and then anyone else from our group that is waiting for a match in there will get matched up with you, so you can play people in a certain group. Even right now, there was like one that was just made by the Pokemon Company for beginners. But even despite it being just this very broad group that was made for the whole world, pretty much, I was only fighting the same 2 or 3 people over and over with it right now. So I'm thinking most people are still just doing the random matchups, and they haven't been joining those pre-made groups, or they're looking for their own private groups like we have going.
Right, but this functionality is definitely useful for us as the SwitchCast community because, it's a great way to centralize our activity for the game.
And local multiplayer. I'm hoping to try this out actually tomorrow. I haven't tested this out yet, but I saw I did play it with in the demo, and
right.
I'll say that there's the two options. You could play with the split screen or the single screen mode. I really think as cool as it was to include split screen, it's not that functional. It's
right.
Yeah,
split screen cuts the frame rate of the game to 30 frames per second, and this game really kind of needs to be 60 frames per second.
I think so.
Playing on the one screen mode for local multiplayer is ideal. Now, honestly, regardless of the split screen or one screen, this is already better than the Wii U's offering. And I mentioned that in the start of this segment. It was just such a pain to set up multiplayer local multiplayer in the Wii U version completely. This is just an improvement every step of the way.
The only thing to keep note is in the one screen mode is that, it's pretty normal in dual mode since, it's just, the 2D kind of combat, one player's on the reverse side. But in the field mode, just the one player, because it focuses over the shoulder of player one. So player two kind of has to control himself, like looking a little bit more in the foreground, in the background. It's not that big a deal, but it is just a little something that
difference.
Player two has to get used to slightly more than player one.
Right.
But other than that, it's good. Or if you just have two switches, then no problem at all.
Yeah. That's how other 3D fighting games have handled multiplayer on the same screen. So people are used to other 3D fighting games. Yeah, it'll just be a seamless transition for you.
All right, was there anything else that you wanted to really hit upon? I mean, obviously we have a lot more to cover in the future with this, but I mean, I think that was a pretty in-depth dissection.
Yeah, of the game itself. Now, I did want to bring up, because a lot of people actually messaged me about this. A lot of people are kind of wondering whether they should stick with ARMS or join us on the Pokken Tournament hype train. I'm wondering what you think about this, Casey.
I think Pokken is worth playing more if you are interested in going that extra step, and you're not just going to play this on the easiest level. You're going to try to learn those more complex mechanics down the line. And even though it does a fairly smooth learning curve to get you there, it's still a game that you have to put a fair amount of work into to just master your own character, let alone the matchups. Whereas ARMS, it's still pretty much like you can play that game for a week, and I think you'll be hard pressed to find an opponent who just crushes you and, his mastery of the game just overwhelms you. Whereas in Pokken, I think that's a little more possible, but that also means there's more room for growth for the person who wants to play it dedicated with other dedicated players. ARMS is, a little more Smash Brothers-y. You could play that with casual people who just, aren't looking to get hardcore into it. They just want to have a fun punching time.
Right. And I guess for you, Casey, personally, why would you pick one over the other to invest in?
I picked to stick with Pokken because, I like the graphics. I like the characters. I'm a Pokemon fan, and I'm willing to try and reach that level of knowledge at the game.
Right. And for me, there were a lot of aspects of ARMS that I really liked. I liked that it distilled the zoning element of a fighting game into very simple movements. But I definitely prefer Pokken Tournament on my side, just because Pokken does the same thing. It distills the fundamentals of a fighting game and allows you to have the same type of zoning, positional thought process, while also having a wider roster of diverse characters, having the phase shift element that balances things out. And it feels like a lot more diversity in the game, and it feels like it's more fun for me.
All right, so I think that's pretty much covered it. So why don't we say goodbye to JV for now? But you'll be back with us next week, right, JV?
Oh, absolutely I will. Of course, Casey, I definitely had to come in here to talk about Pokken Tournament. I've been dreaming of this game since the start of the Switch, since it was first announced.
So we'll talk to you next week, and I'll see the rest of you listeners at the end of this transition.
All right, see you guys. Have fun.
All right, everybody, time for the news rundown, and it looks like I'm going to be going solo. I do want to give special thanks, though, to one of our patrons, Swilly, who tried to come in and fill in for JV here, but we just had some audio technical difficulties, so it just wasn't in the cards for tonight, but I really appreciate him coming and stepping up to the plate. I'm going to try to finish this episode out solo. So let me know if you guys get sick of my voice at any time here. I will try to make this fun and brief as possible, but let's go through it all here. All right. So topping off our news, just because we were talking about Pokken Tournament DX so much, I thought it'd be pretty cool to list out that there was a special code given out to get a few extra free trainer outfits for your avatar. I mean, there's hundreds and so many options as is, and you could even get more if you weren't aware from any amiibo. But there's a couple of special ones that look pretty cool. Just for going to the Ferrum region map, you hit the X button and go to System menu, and you can select an option for special codes, and there are a number of different codes you can put in for a few pretty cool, like these leather jackets, and there's a few Decidui shirts that you can get. So if you are interested in more cool outfits and possibly something that not a lot of people will have, I will include these codes in the show description, so check those out and add those to your collection right now, or after you listen to this show. Next up, we have the Nintendo World Championships 2017 were announced. They're bringing it back. I believe it's been 2 years since we had one of these. And it looked like, looking at the announcement video, they seem to be focusing, at least from this, entirely on 3DS games, which, I mean, it's cool and fun, but I feel like either they're hiding a secret Switch game that'll be part of the competition, or maybe they just don't feel like people have had enough time to become like championship level with any of the games on the Switch yet. But I just thought it was worth noting because it's really cool. They're going to have this at the Nintendo New York store, so I might try to check this out if there is going to be any Switch competition going on. But I'm still going to be paying attention and hope if that comes up. In the rumor mill, so take this a little bit of a grain of salt, but it's from a fairly reliable source that GTA 5 is going to get a Nintendo Switch port. This is by the same source that leaked LA Noire as a Switch game, and that's not exactly a shot in the dark that most people would make. So it seems to be, if their past performance is any indication, they might be onto something here. The user by the name of Vern, he was talked about in NeoGAF, and there was a few other posts around there and on Twitter and discussions about that, just basically hinting at this. So it seems like this could be a possibility, and we've talked about this before in the past, that it's a pretty important title. And with LA Noire coming over, it does make sense. Let's hope this comes through. Speaking of LA Noire, we just got one interesting little detail on it. Apparently, it will run on 1080p in docked mode, but it will go down to 720p in handheld mode. That's pretty standard for games right now. This, however, is coming at the same time we learned that Doom is going to be 720p docked. So that might actually be a little more of a graphical hit to it than many people might have expected. It probably will still look, acceptable and good. This might be one of those concessions to keep the frame rates up, which is probably a more important aspect for an FPS like that. But I can tell that some people who, at least those who've played it on other systems, might not like that downgrade. We have a few details revealed for Chess Ultra. This, again, I know it's so weird that there is a chess game that we're interested in, but I have been brushing up on my chess ever since we saw this reveal. I'm still practicing on the app, and I've played several people in the community, and it's been pretty fun. But apparently Chess Ultra for the Switch will have exclusive multiplayer features, including cross-platform compatibility. So players on the Switch will be able to go against users on Xbox One and PC. You will also be able to take advantage of the Switch's versatility through a few other multiplayer options, including local multiplayer cross-table mode. Basically, if you lay down the Switch tablet in the middle of a table, two players can literally sit on opposite sides of the Switch and use half a Joy-Con each to control their moves on their turn. Pretty cool. It will also have, a docked mode, obviously, and tabletop mode with the Pro Controller, or handheld mode with the Joy-Con using the touchscreen. Touchscreen makes the most sense there. Fans of JRPGs and who've been looking forward to more of Square Enix's productions on the Switch will get a taste of that in the near future, as Lost Sphere has a demo out right now on the Japanese eShop. Now, this is only in Japanese, so you're not going to be able to, maybe download it, but you won't really be able to play it as is. But that does indicate we should expect a North American version of this in the near future. So I feel that this title's been a little mysterious. I've seen some gameplay and I've seen a little bit about the plot, but I feel like we really haven't gotten a deep look at this yet. So let's see if this is up to the level of, their other recent demo, which was the Octopath Travelers one, and that really stunned a lot of us. So hopefully this will be on par with that, or maybe not hopefully, because I don't know if I can handle this many good RPGs. So it will be a 793 megabyte download, so maybe that indicates to you how big a game that is. FIFA 18 has an exclusive Switch kit for the Nintendo Switch version of the game, which is actually going to include a special uniforms with the Nintendo Switch logo for anyone, who's picking that up. So that's going to be, even though it's kind of missing a few features that are on the other systems, it's a cool little extra exclusive for Switch players that you might enjoy. Voice, the rhythm game that I always have on my Switch, that it's kind of my fail-safe game when I just kind of want to zone out. It's actually gotten popular enough that Rayark has decided to release a physical version of this game, at least in Japan, in early 2018. This has a few other little extras. Of course, there's going to be some added content. I'm sure the people who buy the physical version will get a few extra songs. Maybe we'll get those on the downloadable version as well, though, so we'll see. But what's actually really interesting is that they have included a TV mode for this one, in which you'll be able to use the buttons on your controller somehow. I'm not 100% sure if that will work with this game quite as much. I did feel like a lot of the enjoyment was how my fingers kind of had to dance around, but then again, a lot of people had a problem with that aspect. They didn't like the imprecise movements and the way it kind of psyched your hands out at times. So maybe this actually will work out better for some people in the TV mode. But we'll see, and I'm just glad to see that this game is still thriving, and they have more rhythm games coming, so kudos to them. And since it's just a rhythm game, even if it doesn't come out in North America, it might not be a bad import. It's not like you really have to read anything in this game. You just pick a song from the icons and you start playing. So it's still probably a valid option for anyone who's interested in these games. We got to look at some of the special features in Resident Evil Revelations 1 and 2 on the Switch, and it looks like they're going to make use of that IR camera on the Joy-Cons that really have gone underused. I totally even forgot it was on there. But it's apparently they're going to use it as a way of reloading your weapons. They have a little infographic showing you that it kind of looks like you just have to move the camera and like put it on top of your hand, or just like have it almost touch the other controller, kind of like you're loading another cartridge into, you know, your imaginary gun that's in your other hand. It's a kind of cool thing, and it probably will add to the immersion of the game. It might be a little faster. It'll definitely be better than having to go to a menu screen and do it. Not that you always have to do that in most games, but it's a little, you know, it's a pretty cool little feature. It'd be nice to see the camera getting used in some way for some games. And you know, we actually just had a discussion in the chat this week. Some people were bringing up the fact that the HD Rumble has actually not been overly used in any games recently. We were saying the last game that it was really noticeable in was Tumbleseed, and so we're trying to think of anyone else that could use that really well, and I think a shooting game like that might be able to add a little, like, you know, kickback to some guns or something. I don't know. These little features that are in the controllers, I'd like to see them brought up a little bit more, and well, this is something. So we have a bunch of DLC and updates that were announced this week for a bunch of different games. First off, Fire Emblem Warriors. They said that it's going to have a season pass with a bunch of DLC packs included. This will be available October 20th. And for $20, you can get the whole season pass, which includes 3 DLC packs. Each DLC pack is filled with new playable characters and weapons, and by purchasing the season pass for either the Switch or the 3DS version, players will receive a bridal costume for Lucina. And the packs seem to be divvied up by themes of some different games. The DLC Pack 1, which is actually going to be released December of this year, and it's $9 on its own. That's going to have Fire Emblem Fates content. DLC Pack 2, which is going to be February of 2018. It's going to have characters and items that hail from Fire Emblem Shadow Dragon. And the third one, which will be out March 2018, has Fire Emblem Awakenings content. So that covers most of the biggest titles that people would be interested in, at least some of the more recent ones. I'd be interested to see, after people pick up this game, how many are going to, you know, want this extra content and keep playing the game. I want to see if there's more missions, if that includes. Is that just going to be, you know, new characters to replay the game with? For $20, and I'm assuming they're going to follow the Zelda plan in that it's going to have new challenges to take on and pretty good content. So far, I have not been displeased with what they've provided in the DLC. I didn't personally buy the Breath of the Wild season pass, only because I just have too much to take on as in, and I don't think anyone has felt that Breath of the Wild was skimping on any content, so I'm willing to give this the benefit of the doubt. This could be good for anyone who's going to be a diehard Warriors fan. Dragon Ball Z Xenoverse 2 is getting DLC this fall, and it's also getting a free update soon. The DLC this fall is going to include, it looks like, a lot of the characters and challenges from the Majin Buu saga of the game. We see Dabura and Buu, which has the Gohan absorbed version of him. And those are going to be playable characters. Zamasu will also be there to teach created characters his attacks as a master/mentor. And there's a bunch of screenshots, so it's just, you know, more characters. It looks like it sounds like it's actually going to be a lot of new content for the game. This is probably the other biggest fighting game that came out this week, not to ignore it, and because I've been playing Pokken so much. So this is actually a pretty epic looking title. And that fact that there's already a bunch of new content, both free and paid, probably will keep it going and keep it valuable for people for a long time. So WWE 2K18, which is arriving in fall this year, it's also got its season pass all lined up, and this is going to be a very hefty one. This is a $30 pack, but there is a huge list of extras that come with this, including lots and lots of characters, it looks like. I mean, I haven't followed wrestling in a long time, so none of these names particularly ring a bell to me. Splatoon, in its most recent update, got the Rapid Blaster Pro. So one more weapon for your arsenal there, though I'll say at this point I've been spending so much time like mastering the weapons that I have chosen in that game that I would be very reluctant to start dabbling with the newer weapons unless I really played it so much that I was like getting bored of it, which I have not. So if you're the kind of person who constantly is looking for something new, kudos. But I think I'm really just trying to master my weapons. That's where I'm at with this game. Sonic Mania is getting a patch. This game apparently had some bugs, including the home button took forever to actually register. I also added the Supersonic button, which is a one-press shortcut to the super forms. So I guess that makes that a little easier there. Lego Worlds got an update. Apparently this was full of problems and little bugs as it came out, including some missing features. People were just not able to play online multiplayer, so the patch adds that back into it. It looks like the frame rate is now as steadily at 30 frames per second, but it seems they've drawn back the draw distance, and the resolution, those have taken a little bit of a hit from this, so it's a little bit of a trade-off. And this added the new icon, which I just, people always, giving people problems over the icons of these games. Game-changing stuff here. All right, down the pipe, we have a couple of new games that were announced October 19th. We are getting Spelunker Party. This was actually out in Japan, I saw the demo for this earlier in the Japanese eShop. This looks like a pretty fun little 4-player co-op adventure game in some caves, a little platformer, pretty fun. There'll be a demo for this October 7th if anyone wants to try it out beforehand. Zero Gunner 2, which is said to be coming out sooner than later, quote. This is a helicopter shoot 'em up, and it's an old game it looks like, but it's pretty cool looking graphics, and I like the fact that it does one interesting thing with the genre, in that you're not forced to just be facing one direction. It's not a shmup where you're just, going from the bottom up. You can rotate the orientation of your helicopter so you can address enemies from any direction they come from, and they do come from all 4 directions as you're fighting. Cool. The Mummy Demastered, which is a action game based on the new World of Darkness movie version of The Mummy. It looks to be actually pretty good, people said, despite the fact that I heard the movie was relatively horrible. And it just looks like a simple shooting side-scroller game where it kind of has an old-school vibe to it. It's nothing super fancy, like 16-bitty kind of graphics, maybe. Attack on Titan 2 was announced for early 2018. No gameplay in this trailer they showed off, but, giant naked zombie things versus people with grappling hooks. You know the deal, guys. If you like the last one, I'm sure you're drooling for this one, even though I have not been into that series for a while. I do not care for it. Atelier, Liddy, and Suelle, The Alchemist and the Mysterious Paintings. This is coming out early 2018. If you are not familiar, the Atelier series is a prolific series of JRPGs starring very moe, cute anime girls doing alchemy and questing, and it's actually not a bad series of games. A lot of these came out on PlayStation systems, including the Vita. They were not bad. They were actually solid games. So if you like the kind of very soft, flowery anime style of the characters and the world, and it is quite beautiful, you might find a good game in here. It's it kind of gives off the vibe that it's like an RPG for girls, and girls may enjoy this, or it might be more aimed at them. But I don't think anyone should write this series off just because of that aesthetic. It's not bad. There's a lot of crafting in it. There's a lot of things outside of just the usual going through dungeons and getting better equipment. There's a lot of good systems for, developing items and side things. Like in a lot of them, you would like run a shop and you try to, you would go on missions so you can get stuff to make and sell. They usually do interesting things like that. So I like seeing typically Vita aimed games coming out on the Switch. These are the titles that I've always said I'm happy to see find a new home on this console. And the new releases out right now, of course, Pokken Tournament DX. We have Dragonball Z Xenoverse, the Lego Ninjago movie video game, Sign EX, the cool shmup with a story, Arcade Archives Mario Brothers, the rhythm game demo, Picross S, and we saw that a Golf Story snuck its way onto the eShop, so it went from, we weren't sure when it was coming out this month, but it waited to the very end, but it should be out by the time this podcast is up. Inversus Deluxe, Conga Master Party, and Astro Bears Party, which is kind of reminds me of that Snake game, or like the Tron one, where you're running around on a map and you leave a trail that others can run into and die. This is like that, but it's up to 4 players on a sphere, like a planet, kind of like Mario Galaxy sort of thing, and you're running around this 3-dimensional planet, leaving a trail for others to hit each other. It looks like it could actually be pretty fun, and it's all with bears and space suits, so there's that. September 29th, we get FIFA 18 and One Piece Unlimited World Red Deluxe Edition. October 3rd, we'll see Lovers in a Dangerous Space-Time, Super Beat Sonic, Battle Chasers Night War. October 5th, Axiom Verge, Volgar the Viking, and Tumblestone. And October 6th, we get Oxenfree. All right, let's shift over to the Community Pulse and see what you people have to say. So I'm not just talking to myself. All right, I put out the call for questions and you answered with questions. So let's head right into this in the Community Pulse. Let's start off with Abraham Martinez, who wrote, have you thought about owning multiple Switches, whether with significant other or alternatively maybe how you would play with family members? This comes up. A few people I know actually did buy multiple Switches so they can play multiplayer with their family, and that makes sense if you have a multiple kids sort of situation. Personally, my wife is not a prolific player by any stretch, and anytime we do play something, we're going to play a co-op thing. That's why we're so looking forward to Mario Odyssey, since that'll be something that really interests her, and I will happily be her hat or her cap for that adventure. It really depends on how much the other people in your household play, but I could totally see it, and it's easy to do. I mean, even if you have one that's just going to be the portable one and one that's going to be the house, the one attached to a TV, you could figure that out. But it makes sense. I mean, at the price it is, it's not stupid to have a second one. So, Allison Bruno wrote, we finally got a taste of a classic Nintendo game on Switch with the Arcade Archives Mario Brothers. Do you think that this means the end of the Virtual Console, or are they just testing the waters and waiting to make a big announcement with the paid service and Stream apps? I do think that's the case. I don't think that they're going to discontinue or they're going to not do Virtual Console. If they weren't, I think they would have said something about that. Actually, now it's just it's a question that's constantly in their face. It's something people are always asking them. It's the first thing people asked me to always make predictions about on this show. They know it's something people want. They wouldn't lead us on. At least I'm willing to bet that they wouldn't just let that linger as a false anticipation. All right. I do think come the paid service, when that all kicks in, Virtual Console is going to be so tied to that I just don't think they want to release it before the paid service starts. It's just going to be part of what it means to be part of the paid service. Colton Morley asks, tomorrow we have quite a few indie games coming out. Are there any that you have your eye on? Definitely, I have been talking about Golf Story for a while, and I think that's just this... I think that's the kind of game that attracts me. I think it's going to be surprisingly popular. It just has that same kind of charm as a Stardew Valley kind of game or a Harvest Moon, just a different take on it. It's a genre of games. I mean, it does something very unique with the whole golf element. It's just a genre of games that I think people enjoy having in a nice, small, affordable package like that. And it seems to be really well done with some color and character. I also think Sign More EX looked phenomenal. I mean, there's a lot of shmups. If you're into the arcade classics from Neo Geo, you have a lot of options. But I do think Sign More EX is worth a look. It's just got that really cool steampunk kind of aesthetic, and it seems like it's, like I said, they're trying to add a storyline to it or some moral choice system in there. And I think it's worth a look to see how they actually do that, or is it just another shmup, but a pretty one? So those are the two that I think are definitely worth taking a look at, in the whole bunch of them. I did see that some people had listed Earth Atlantis as a release. They just told me that there was a bit of a miscommunication on that. That is a game I'm really looking forward to, though, and I was very excited when I saw some people listing that as one of the releases for this week. But it is coming soon, it's just not this week. But Earth Atlantis is probably the indie title that I'm most excited about at this particular second. And that will do it for this episode. All right, well, let me first give my thanks to all the patrons who are backing the show and helping us run this place and supporting us with your monthly donations. That's why JV was able to get that Elgato that we mentioned, and we're going to start kicking off that YouTube channel full speed with some videos very soon. I also want to thank all the people who left us those iTunes reviews or the Apple Podcast reviews. That's been great. It's got us a lot of good attention, and we've been rising up the podcast ranks in the games and hobbies section, and I'm ecstatic. I want to give a quick shout out to 10 of our people who left reviews, with Judd Fan Club, Rawflar, Adam511, Link 31254, Federico S, Brighteen, J Mana 0123, Sonic Tonic, Giga Tigga, and It's Mew MC. Thank you, guys. Thank you. If you want to be awesome like them or any of our patrons or reviewers, you can follow their lead. Either go to patreon.com/theswitchcast and pledge whatever you want to support us. It could be $1 a month. It could be $5 a month. There are different reward tiers, and we always choose patrons as the first choice for people to show up on the show for special episodes, and they get access to a few extra pieces of content like our Zelda Breath of the Wild Switch topics that I will be publishing probably this weekend. I'll have time to edit it, so I'm going to try to put that together then. All that aside, and finally, I want to thank the HeatleyBros for our theme song at the top of the show. And until next time, everybody, switch it up.